Have you ever wondered if Jesus, a figure often seen through purely religious or spiritual lenses, might have had intriguing behind-the-scenes interactions with the political powers of his time? Most discussions about his life focus on his teachings, miracles, and conflicts with certain Jewish leaders. Yet, what if there were moments that never made the spotlight? Quiet encounters with Roman officials, subtle exchanges that could have influenced not only his ministry but also the political climate of first-century Palestine. As we venture into this topic, we'll explore historical context, examine theories, and consider whether it's possible that Jesus might have quietly conversed with Roman authorities whose influence extended across the region. This isn't about straying into conspiracy. Rather, it's about broadening our understanding of the world Jesus inhabited and the breadth of his message, which transcended the boundaries of class, culture, and political power. God has prepared something extraordinary for you, something that can open your mind to new understandings and spiritual insights. To be a part of this journey, subscribe to this channel and leave a like. This small action aligns you with a community that strives to explore truth with honesty and depth. Just as we delve into lesser-known aspects of Jesus' historical context, your subscription may open doors for you to receive blessings of wisdom and discernment. The act of engaging with this content, of stepping beyond the conventional narrative, mirrors the curiosity and openness required to truly grasp the magnitude of Jesus' mission. By supporting this channel, you're not simply following a trend, you're choosing to seek insights that can enrich your life and faith. Imagine the social and political landscape of first-century Palestine. This wasn't a tranquil backwater, it was a region simmering under Roman occupation. The roads were patrolled by Roman soldiers, and taxes, often seen as heavy burdens, flowed steadily into the coffers of the empire. The people, devout Jews, local aristocrats, merchants, farmers, and tradespeople, lived under the shadow of imperial authority. The tension between Roman officials and Jewish leaders, both religious and secular, defined the rhythms of daily life. At the heart of this tension lay questions of identity, loyalty, and compliance. The religious authorities were charged not only with maintaining religious tradition but also navigating a treacherous relationship with the occupiers. Rome demanded order, tribute, and submission, while the Jewish population longed for autonomy, cultural integrity, and the fulfillment of messianic expectations. Key figures like Pontius Pilate and Herod Antipas entered this stage as players with immense power. Pilate, as the Roman prefect, held authority over life and death. He was the ultimate judge in significant legal disputes, including those that might concern an itinerant preacher stirring the crowds. Herod Antipas, though technically a client ruler under Rome, exerted significant influence in the region of Galilee. Both men, and others like them, would have been aware of movements and leaders who could potentially incite unrest, especially if those leaders carried any messianic connotations or attracted large followings. This begs the question, could Jesus have met privately with such figures? Historical records do not explicitly attest to secret meetings. The Gospels, our primary sources, do not detail any covert interactions where Jesus and a Roman authority sat down away from the public eye to discuss his message, his intentions, or the unrest he might have stirred. The narrative we have is more direct. Jesus at times addresses Roman power symbolically or indirectly, and of course, he stands before Pilate prior to his crucifixion. Yet, what's left unsaid? The absence of a record does not necessarily mean such conversations never took place. It only means they were not included in the accounts that survived. Consider that Jesus moved through a landscape rife with informants, messengers, and intermediaries. He taught openly in synagogues and public squares, and crowds followed him. Such attention would not have escaped the notice of Roman spies or officials. At times, Jesus' words, whether about a kingdom of heaven or a radical form of justice and mercy, could have been interpreted as politically charged statements. Might a Roman authority have summoned him quietly to gauge his intentions, to ensure this Jewish teacher was not plotting rebellion? Or perhaps, just as Jesus conversed with individuals from various backgrounds, he may have encountered lower-ranking Roman officials who asked him questions, intrigued by his teachings or concerned about his influence. These scenarios, while speculative, are not beyond the realm of possibility given the context. the existence of secret meetings would hinge on motives. What would Rome gain from such encounters? Possibly a better understanding of Jesus as a potential political threat. Conversely, would Jesus have had any reason to meet privately with Roman leaders? If he wished to navigate the political environment with care, ensuring that his mission of spiritual renewal was not mistaken for insurrection, he might have chosen to clarify his stance. Yet, his consistent approach seemed to avoid direct political alliances or endorsements of violent resistance. Instead, he taught principles that could subvert oppressive systems without directly calling for their overthrow. Another layer to consider, the concept of secrecy, in the ancient world did not mirror ours today. Conversations were often held discreetly due to social hierarchies. A brief exchange with a Roman centurion or a simple dialogue with a soldier curious about Jesus' words wouldn't necessarily leave a historical footprint. The Gospels do record Jesus healing the servant of a Roman centurion, an interaction that implies at least some level of contact with Roman authority. Although not a secret meeting per se, it does show a direct engagement with Roman power structures, even if on a personal, compassionate level rather than a political one. It's also valuable to recall that the Gospel writers had specific theological and narrative goals. Their silence on secret meetings could reflect that such details were not central to their purpose. The evangelists aimed to convey Jesus' divine identity, his fulfillment of prophecy, his teachings on love and righteousness, and the events leading to his sacrificial death and resurrection. Covert encounters with Roman officials, if they occurred, might not have served these theological priorities. Consequently, any subtle negotiations or clarifications Jesus made to avoid unnecessary conflict with Rome might have simply passed unrecorded. As we ponder these possibilities, it's crucial to maintain a balance. On one hand, the idea of Jesus involved in secret negotiations or dialogues with Roman authorities can sound like unfounded speculation or sensationalism. Yet, on the other hand, the complexities of first-century politics and social relations leave ample room for the unknown. The absence of explicit textual evidence does not definitively rule out nuanced interactions. Our exploration aims not to claim certainty where none can exist, but to encourage a thoughtful approach. By asking these questions, we gain a richer understanding of Jesus as both a spiritual leader and a historical figure who moved within a charged political environment. Such consideration encourages us to see his ministry not as detached from the world's powers, but as deeply engaged with them, even if primarily at the level of challenging their assumptions and injustices rather than seeking secret alliances. In the parts to follow, we will delve deeper into specific historical hints, scholarly perspectives, and the known interactions Jesus had with Roman figures like Pilate. We'll consider how Jesus' responses to Roman power structures were consistent with his broader mission and message. And we'll reflect on what this can teach us about how we engage with political and social challenges in our own lives. For now, let these initial thoughts lay a foundation. Jesus lived in a real world of empires, taxes, soldiers, and governors. Whether or not he met secretly with Roman authorities, the intersection of his mission with political power remains a captivating avenue of inquiry. Now, let's delve deeper into the lesser-known theories and speculative accounts that suggest Jesus may have engaged in more nuanced and strategic dialogues with the Roman powers of his day. Although the canonical Gospels paint a relatively straightforward picture of Jesus' encounters with figures like Pontius Pilate and Herod Antipas, historians, scholars, and curious minds have long wondered whether there might have been more subtle exchanges occurring behind the scenes. If you haven't already, this is a wonderful time to subscribe to this channel and leave a like. By doing so, you open yourself to blessings of insight and understanding that God is ready to pour into your life. Engaging with this exploration can broaden your perspective, allowing new facets of Jesus' ministry and historical context to resonate within you. Let's revisit the most famous encounter between Jesus and Roman authority: the trial before Pontius Pilate as recorded in the Gospels. The standard narrative shows Pilate as a somewhat reluctant judge, torn between maintaining peace and appeasing local Jewish leaders who wanted Jesus condemned. Yet some scholars speculate that the trial might have been the culmination of more complex dialogues. Could Pilate, concerned about the growing influence of a charismatic teacher, have sought a private understanding with Jesus, probing him for political intentions or revolutionary leanings? While the Gospels capture a concise and tense exchange, these alternative theories imagine conversations that never made it to the official accounts, discussions in which Pilate perhaps tried to negotiate a compromise, secure an assurance that Jesus would not threaten Roman order, or even extract a subtle form of allegiance. Such theories sometimes suggest that Pilate might have considered releasing Jesus under certain conditions, or even leveraging his popularity to pacify the local population. Conversely, they propose that Jesus, consistent with his teachings, would have refused to strike any politically expedient deal that compromised his mission. Instead of seeking political favors or threatening rebellion, Jesus might have offered Pilate something even more bewildering to Roman ears, a vision of a kingdom not built on violence or oppression, but on truth and compassion. Of course, these ideas stretch beyond the textual evidence at hand. They rely on the assumption that Roman officials rarely approached critical situations without careful negotiation, and that a figure as influential as Jesus would not have escaped such scrutiny. Turning to Herod Antipas, the Gospels describe a brief yet curious encounter. When Jesus stood before Herod, the ruler was eager to see a miracle or some spectacle. Yet, in Luke's account, Jesus remained silent, offering no response to Herod's questions. This silence, while perplexing, has sparked much speculation. Could it have been a deliberate strategy rather than mere unwillingness to engage? Some suggest that this silence communicated more than words could have, perhaps a refusal to entertain the trivialization of his mission, or a subtle condemnation of Herod's corrupt pursuit of sensational entertainment. Another line of thought proposes that Herod, behind closed doors, might have attempted to sway Jesus or enlist his influence with the crowds, but Jesus deftly sidestepped any compromise by declining to speak. Without further evidence, these remain intriguing possibilities rather than established facts, yet they remind us that silence can itself be a powerful form of communication. Beyond Pilate and Herod, there's the possibility that Jesus interacted with lesser-known governors, prefects, or Roman officials stationed in various regions. Although the canonical sources do not detail such encounters, history and archaeology reveal a complex Roman bureaucracy spread throughout the land. Could Jesus have found moments to speak with these individuals about issues like taxation, fair treatment of the poor, or the moral implications of Roman rule? Some apocryphal texts and oral traditions, not included in the biblical canon, hint at additional dialogues or at least at Roman curiosity about Jesus' message. While such sources often lack the historical rigor of the Gospels, they can stimulate our imagination, painting a picture of Jesus as a figure who, though not politically aligned, nevertheless engaged with the machinery of empire through teaching, healing, and quiet confrontations of conscience. When examining these theories, we must turn to historical sources outside the New Testament. Writers like Flavius Josephus, a Jewish historian writing under Roman patronage, and Tacitus, a Roman historian who briefly mentions Jesus, confirm that Jesus existed and was executed under Pilate. Yet these accounts offer no details of secret negotiations. Apocryphal Gospels, later Christian writings, and traditions passed down through centuries sometimes allude to interactions unmentioned in the canonical texts, though their reliability remains questionable. Ultimately, the historical evidence is sparse, leaving room for speculation rather than definitive conclusions. Still, the value of these theories lies not in their provability but in the broader perspective they offer. Even if secret meetings never occurred, considering the possibility broadens our understanding of Jesus' historical environment. It helps us see him as someone who navigated a world of complex politics, where Roman officials held immense power and influence. Entertaining these notions can challenge a one-dimensional view of Jesus and encourage us to appreciate the subtle interplay between spiritual truth and political reality. After all, Jesus openly acknowledged the existence of earthly authorities and instructed his followers to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, demonstrating that he understood the delicate balance of power at play. If we think about the potential impact of these theoretical interactions, the implications are substantial. Had Jesus engaged in more nuanced dialogues, it might suggest that his ministry included not only openly confronting injustice through parables and healings, but also quietly influencing those in power. This, however, would need to align with his mission, never aiming for personal gain or political compromise, but always pointing toward a higher moral and spiritual order. Such a perspective doesn't rewrite the Gospels. Rather, it fills the margins with possibilities that highlight Jesus' intellectual prowess, moral courage, and savvy understanding of human institutions. In terms of Roman-Jewish relations, these hypothetical encounters could have shaped local perceptions. If any Roman official left a conversation with Jesus intrigued or challenged, that subtle shift might have influenced how soldiers treated peasants, how taxes were collected, or how officials exercised their authority. Conversely, it might have solidified Roman suspicion or hostility if they perceived Jesus as a threat, someone too persuasive, too righteous, too unconcerned with the status quo. Still, we must acknowledge the absence of concrete proof. The narratives we have come primarily from the Gospel accounts, focused on Jesus' theological and salvific significance, rather than detailing every political maneuver. Speculations serve as a reminder that we glimpse only a fraction of the events surrounding Jesus. There were likely countless conversations, gestures, and decisions that never entered the historical record. While we can't confirm these secret dialogues or negotiations, imagining them helps us better appreciate the historical Jesus as a figure who did not float above the political fray, but rather lived, taught, and died in a place and time where power dynamics were anything but trivial. As we move toward the final segment of our exploration, we will consider the broader implications. What can these possibilities teach us about Jesus' character and mission? How might our faith be enriched by considering the complexities he might have faced? And how does this inform our understanding of faith's intersection with politics, power, and justice in our own era? While we may never know all the details, the exercise of imagining Jesus in these heightened political contexts can deepen our respect for his ministry and encourage us to engage thoughtfully with the powers that shape our world today. As we arrive at the conclusion of our exploration, it's important to remember that considering the possibility of Jesus' discrete political encounters isn't about inventing new narratives. It's about opening our minds to the full complexity of his historical environment. Jesus was no mere abstract moral philosopher. He lived in a world governed by imperial power, where faith, culture, and authority intertwined in unpredictable ways. By acknowledging that he may have engaged with Roman officials, whether publicly or behind closed doors, we can begin to appreciate the multifaceted nature of his life and mission. Such a viewpoint doesn't diminish the spiritual significance of his message. Instead, it enriches our understanding, showing us a leader who was wise, discerning, and deeply aware of the human structures that affected people's daily lives. God has prepared something truly extraordinary for you, and embracing a broader perspective is one way to discover it. Before we continue, I encourage you to subscribe to this channel and give this video a like. Through this act of faith and engagement, you open yourself to new insights, allowing the seeds of truth to take root and flourish in your heart. Just as Jesus interacted with a wide array of people, from humble fishermen to powerful governors, your openness here symbolizes a willingness to learn from all corners of his story, those well-known and those less explored. What can we take away from this inquiry? For one, it challenges us to consider leadership in our own time. Jesus demonstrated that true authority rests not in brute force, intimidation, or cunning politicking, but in character shaped by compassion, integrity, and service. If he navigated a complex political landscape without ever sacrificing his core values, standing against injustice, championing the marginalized, and prioritizing the eternal over the expedient, then we too can strive to bring moral depth to the leadership roles we occupy today. Whether in government, business, community initiatives, or our personal relationships, we can learn from Jesus' example, to engage with power structures thoughtfully, to question prevailing norms, and to seek outcomes that uplift rather than oppress. This perspective also calls us to reflect on how our faith interacts with systems of power. Can we, inspired by Jesus' possible dialogues with authorities, advocate for fairness, challenge corruption, and elevate the dignity of every human life? The essence of his teachings, rooted in love, mercy, and righteousness, invites us to infuse our civic responsibilities and policy decisions with genuine concern for the vulnerable. In a world filled with complex challenges, The belief that moral convictions can inform ethical governance should not be dismissed as naive. Instead, it can be the guiding star that prevents society from losing its way. As you carry these thoughts forward, consider deepening your knowledge of the historical and cultural context in which Jesus lived. Read trusted historical sources, consult theological scholarship, and engage in conversations with others who share a desire to understand the fullness of his story. By doing so, you join a rich tradition of seekers who understand that the Gospels, while centered on spiritual truth, also weave together countless human threads, political, social, and cultural, that can offer profound lessons for our own times. In the end, no matter which theories we entertain, the core message of Jesus remains a clarion call to love, justice, and redemption. Whether or not he held private dialogues with Roman governors, his mission was always about pointing humanity toward a kingdom not of this world, a reign of peace, hope, and righteousness that transcends earthly power struggles. This truth endures, unchanged by the passage of time or the twists of historical conjecture. Thank you for joining us in this exploration. If these reflections have sparked new insights or questions, I invite you to share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective enriches the ongoing conversation, and together we can continue to grow in understanding. May these insights inspire you, challenge you, and lead you into an ever deeper appreciation of Jesus' life and teachings, both within the pages of Scripture and beyond.